Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Voice It. I'm your host, Hannah George from IEEEPIE, and our guest for today is Mr. Bernardo De La Vega, who is the founder of the app Fiesta, which in fact is the very app that we're using today for this interview. So, welcome, sir.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Okay, so let's start our interview with the most obvious question. So, sir, could you introduce this app Fiesta to our listeners and maybe tell us a little bit more about its features?
Yeah, certainly. So Fiesta is a social media platform where people can create interactive online events. And so basically what that means is anybody can create an online event, as you know, a lot of people have transitioned from physical events to online events. And therefore anybody can also attend these events. We are focusing right now on business, tech, and education type events. And we're also hosting obviously a lot of different podcasts, just like this one. So that's kind of like sort of the premise of the app. In a way, you know, if you look at it in a different way, it's kind of like a more fun and social version of Zoom, where you have, you know, because you have a list of all the different events, you have the video conferencing, and there's all these really cool social media elements that make the app really fun in terms of sort of sharing, in terms of recording short video clips, and really sort of gamifying the experience. Instead of likes, we have like this like fire icon or like what we call lit. So people can like say like, oh, that was a cool event. So they tap on the fire icon. So like, oh, that event was lit, right? So a little bit of like cool sort of gamification of the actual events that makes people want to sort of engage more and create more create more events and attend more events.
Okay, so there are a lot of apps. As you said, it's different from Zoom. So there are a lot of apps that have risen due to Corona, like Zoom and Google Meet. So how would you say this is entirely different from those apps?
Yeah, so from what I know, there's really no app like Fiesta because there's other apps that are competitors in just one space, right? So we are combining, you know, a marketplace of events with video conferencing with social media elements, right? So marketplace events, obviously that is very comparable to like Eventbrite, or video conferencing that's comparable to Zoom or WebEx, or you know, even like Google Hangouts or Google Meet. And obviously in terms of social media, you know, there's obviously Instagram, there's LinkedIn, TikTok. But in terms of an app that actually combines all three of them, we haven't really seen sort of any of those. There are apps that are for very big conferences. So Fiesta is not for very big conferences, because for very big conferences, you have like Hey Summit and like a Hopin. And if you're doing a really big conference, those platforms are really good. But Fiesta is more for, you know, that, you know, sort of either sort of entrepreneur, podcaster, organization, or association that is hosting all those weekly events, right? They're like, oh, okay, well, let's host, you know, one event per week and let's meet together, and where they have, you know, 40, 50 different participants or maybe bigger. And they want to sort of, you know, keep this sort of ongoing engagement with their audience. And so that's what Fiesta is for. But again, we're combining three different elements that no other app is currently doing. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So it says that you have completed BBA, and what exactly motivated you to launch an app like Fiesta?
Yeah. So I mean the motivation came from in my previous company. So I've built and sold 2 7-figure e-commerce companies. And in my previous company, it was a food, meat, and kitchen appliance company for which I built. We built an app, and it's actually the best rated kitchen appliance app on the market. And you can find it on the App Store if you just go to Mealthy. You just type in Mealthy, you'll find the app there. And for that one, you know, once we built the app, I just thought that was, you know, really cool. People sort of using it, all sort of looking at all the different functionality, and in a really cool way to just engage with the audience. But after doing that, I said, you know, this is something I really would like to pursue. I sold Mealthy 5 weeks ago, but of course, you know, I started Fiesta 9 months ago. So I've already been working on Fiesta quite a while. We did launch Fiesta in February, but it was an app that told you where all the different events were, like at location events, like all the physical events. And then obviously because of COVID, we pivoted into what Fiesta is now. Funny enough, it seems like this second version, this Fiesta 2.0, is a much better idea than the original idea, and people are really liking. So just like there's been a lot of other case studies, like for example, YouTube started as a dating app, and then it turned into YouTube. Slack started as the founders were doing gaming, and then they just developed sort of like the like in-house messaging system so they could message each other back and forth, and then it became Slack. So kind of Fiesta is a little bit of that, where it was one thing, and then now it's become something quite different. And the pivot is actually a much better idea. So that's kind of where the original how Fiesta came about in terms of creating an app before, and then having a initial idea and pivoting because of COVID, and that's where lands us to where Fiesta is today.
Well, I guess we can say that COVID was a blessing in disguise for Fiesta.
Certainly.
Moving on to the next question. Other than Fiesta, you said you have other products in your market, and can you please talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. When you talk about sort of other products, so I have two companies. So again, because I sold Multi, I have Fiesta, which is obviously sort of the main one, and then I also have a film production company. We just finished shooting a movie, so that's in the sort of the film production space. We're looking to sell that to Netflix. Film production, that's really exciting. That one, I did that movie with my brother. We're 50-50 on that venture. But obviously that's in a very sort of different space. But in terms of in the tech space, it's just Fiesta for now. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so you've worked on different fields like kitchen appliances, applications, and even beauty. So which area do you think is worth the business, and which one gave you the most profit?
Well, the one actually that was the most profitable, the beauty company was very profitable. Obviously, that one I had for 4.5 years. Fiesta is obviously in early stages because we literally just launched it, so it's kind of hard to say. I expect some really good things coming out of Fiesta. So yeah, in terms of the most profit, definitely sort of the beauty company that was extremely profitable. Obviously the thing about sort of beauty space is the margins can be really good, right? Product could cost you $2 or $3 to produce, and if you're selling it for $20-$25, then the sort of the margins there are very good. So if you from a business perspective, if you're selling physical products, you definitely want to look at the margins, right? And so that one was pretty good. It's just at one point I wasn't really excited about selling one more lavender oil or one more sort of retinol cream. And so I was like, I want to do something else. And I just, I went ahead and built Multi and sold sort of the beauty company. I think that, as an entrepreneur, the biggest thing is you have to love what you do. And it needs to be like this, like you have to be really excited about it. Right. For me is the same way I'm really excited about Fiesta. And, everybody I talked about it, they're like, yeah, this sounds really awesome. It's just, if you're not working on something that's really exciting, then you just need to figure out a way to pivot into it, or pivot into something that is just really gets you out of bed and you're like, yes, this is awesome. And if you're not, I talk to a lot of different entrepreneurs, and then, a lot of times they say, yeah, like I have this business or that business, but they've just been doing it for quite a while, or there's just not many new things to it, where I'm like, well, okay, well, they're just kind of going through the motions. And even though it's their own business and they have the freedom, it's just, that sort of passion is no longer there. Right. So that to me is really exciting, because it just makes every day so exciting if you're just really thrilled with what you're doing. And obviously to get there, you have to just be sure to like pivot, right? And pivoting is hard, right? I mean, like pivoting from a beauty company that was just on Amazon to then food, media, and kitchen appliance company where that was outside of Amazon and it had an app, to now only into sort of tech space. So if you look at it from like just a beauty company selling physical products on Amazon to now a tech company, that's a pretty big pivot, right? From one, literally on one end of the spectrum to another. E-commerce company just on Amazon to like multi-channel, sort of like a tech company, because we have the app and the website. That's quite a bit of pivot. And so, for most people, that kind of pivot is pretty hard, or it's just there's so much uncertainty there. For me, it's just been so much fun, and something that I've just, it's been a sort of a gradual progression, and I'm just really happy where I am right now. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so was the idea of becoming an entrepreneur your motive since you were a child, or did it just bloom along the way?
So my first kind of like entrepreneurial venture was when I was 13, 14, when I started my own soccer team. And so I started a soccer team, and and I just went out and because I grew up in Mexico, and I went out and recruited all the best players for my team. And so all the players needed to be between ages 8 and 12. And I was about 13, 14, right? So I was only like a year or two older than most of the players. I was just able to sort of recruit them. They saw that I knew a lot about soccer, and we started sort of the tournament. Funny thing is I charged some of the players that I knew had money, and some of the other players, the funny thing was that the players who were really good were the ones that didn't have any money, right? Because they were just, a lot of them actually, even when they were like 11 or 12, they actually worked in the fields, but they were just really, really good. So I knew I had to have these players. They weren't great for business in terms of sort of financial, but they were great for winning. So I was like, well, if I want to win, I need these players. And so it was just always, sort of juggle with, okay, I'll charge these players for and even though they're not so good, they pay sort of the for the bills for the team, for the ref, and sort of the uniforms and all that kind of stuff, the jerseys. And then with the really good players, I won't charge them, but they'll make us win. And then, if they make us win, then we get more players, and it's just kind of a little bit of a sort of business dynamics there. And that was, ever since I organized that, I was like, this thing of like organizing and figuring out a way to sort of like to make sort of finances work, but at the same time figuring out how to win and sort of in business. There's a lot of things that you have to look at. It's not only obviously about sort of making money, right? So it's about, do you have a really good solution for your customers, and really are you solving a problem? And that was, so that was my first experience, which, just it's carried me on in multiple endeavors. Mm-hmm.
Your childhood sounds very interesting. Moving on. During your life as an entrepreneur, you might have gone through a lot of hardships. How did you overcome all of that?
Yeah, so I would say actually the biggest hardship that I faced was when I was 18, 19. Well, one was when I was 14, 15, because I was bullied a lot, right? So people who are bullied, I was actually very short. My voice had not changed, and for all my friends, it did change. So I was bullied a lot. And that was no fun, but it was very, very sort of character building. So ever since then, I've always kind of had this like inner drive, and you see it with a lot of sort of entrepreneurs, whether it's Elon Musk, Bill Gates, those kind of sort of entrepreneurs. If you read their bios, they were all bullied when they were young, right? And it just creates so much drive. Then the other thing that was, the other thing that was extremely difficult for me was when I was 18, 19. When I graduated high school, I went to sell books door to door, and I graduated high school in Mexico. So I lived in Mexico until I was 18. And my first experience in the US was selling books door to door. And I was only about 40% fluent. And so if you're 40% fluent in a language, and then you have to actually sell books door to door, it's just really, really hard. And actually, I broke the record for the worst salesman ever because I didn't sell a single book for the first 3 weeks, and I was working 80 hours a week. So people were quitting, and they were, because we were all college students, and after the first week they'd ask me like, Bernardo, like, how much did you sell? I'm like, I didn't sell anything. And they're like, and I'm like, how much did you sell? And they would be like, well, I sold these 5 or 10 packages, but I'm quitting. I'm like, why are you quitting? You sold books. And they're like, yeah, but this is just awful. Like, I don't want to sell books door to door. We're working like from 8 in the morning to 10 at night, knocking on people's door. It's just the worst thing ever. And they're like, why aren't you quitting? I'm like, why would I quit? I'm like, I'm committed to this. And if I do well at, selling books door to door, I can do anything in business. My brother had he recruited me, and he had told me on this idea that if I could be successful at selling books door to door, I could do anything in business. So I was so sold on this idea that quitting was never an option, right? And so the second week, then the same thing happened. More people quit. People asking me, why aren't you quitting? You have sold no books in 2 weeks. I'm like, I'm committed to this. If I can do this, I can do anything in business. Third week also comes along. Same thing. By the third week, at least 40-45% of the sort of the college students in our organization had already quit, right? So we were almost about 50% of the people who started. And here I hadn't sold a single book. But then, finally on the fourth week, things started taking off. And then the second summer that I did it, I won Man of the Year for best increase from one summer to the next. But definitely the hardest thing that I've ever done was sell books door to door. And so whenever people are like, oh, starting a business is hard, which it is hard, right? There's so many challenges. I'm always like, listen, this is nothing. This is nothing. Like, you get to sit behind your computer and think, and, because now you can start a business, from your computer. And that is really nothing compared to selling books door to door when you are, sweating and it's super hot and everybody's saying, not interested, not interested. What are you doing here? Like, get off my porch, that kind of stuff. So, it's just sometimes when you put things into perspective, starting a business is hard, but nothing compared to selling books. So to me, it's just been a very, very fun ride, but definitely marked by those previous experiences. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we've come to our last question for this interview, and that is, what any success mantra to share with our listeners and new entrepreneurs that they might need when they start their business?
There's a few ways to look at this. I would say, so for example, Mark Cuban, right, who owns a great entrepreneur, billionaire, he says, for people, because many times people have asked me, and people have always, obviously a whole lot more people have asked him, but he says, if you have to ask, where should I start a business, means you're not ready, right? Because if you were actually wanted to start a business, you would actually just start. You would start in some way. You'd actually just start, selling old stuff you don't use, like on Craigslist or on eBay. I'm not sure which I'm sure, India has some sort of different platforms where you can just, sell your old stuff, or you'd literally just go work for a startup and figure out, or you'd be doing some sort of this company that has they're kind of like selling, it's an older restaurant, and they don't have a social media. So you literally approach a restaurant and say, hey, can I do your social media for you? Because they're just focusing on, cooking food, but, they have no social media presence. So you can literally approach them and say, hey, I'll do your social media for, $100 a month, right? Or whatever amount is. So, for people starting the business, there's just so many ways to get started that sometimes when people ask, well, how do I get started? Or what would you say would be the best thing for me to get started? And if you're asking that question, it inherently means you're not ready. And if you're literally just ready, you're like, okay, I'm just ready. Then just literally go do something, right? You can literally, like I said, start a really small social media agency, because there's so many businesses that don't know how to use social media, that whether it's some sort of restaurant, some sort of printing, like a little printing shop, little, grocery store, whatever it is. And you're like, I'll do your social media for you. You're selling sort of old stuff. You're sort of coming up with, just literally grabbing a really simple product, going to the supplier, grabbing a really simple product, and just selling it for somebody else as somebody else selling somebody else's brand, which is a little bit of drop shipping, or obviously, white labeling. So for example, like selling a lavender oil, right? Which is one of the first things that we did, or a peppermint oil, right? Literally, like, you find a supplier, you put a label on it. You say, like in this case, we put like Rada Beauty lavender oil, and then boom, you put it on Amazon and you put it on whatever platform, or you create your website, right? So find a supplier, you put your label on it, you sell it, and go for a very simple product at first. Don't go for a complicated. For example, A pressure cooker like Milty, that's a very complicated product. So obviously don't start with that because there's regulations, there's certifications, there's all this sort of like the production. The production is very long, but there's some very products that are very simple to sell, right? Like for example, iPhone covers. iPhone covers also very simple. You can just find a supplier and you can start selling. So there's a lot of different ways to get started, but biggest thing is if you haven't started yet, there's something about you that's not ready. And if you're ready, just go ahead and start with anything. And then you'll start learning all these things of like, oh, okay, here's how you start understanding the numbers. Like, okay, if my cost is $3 and I sell it for $15, then this is my profit. These are my operating expenses. So as long as my operating expenses are say $3 or $4 per unit, so then you have your cost of your product plus your operating expenses, and maybe you have some shipping, maybe not. And therefore, what's your profit? Okay, so every time I sell a unit, I'm making $5. So really simple things like that, where you understand your margins, and you say, okay, now if I sell 10 units a day at $5 of profit, so now I'm making $50 of profit per day, right? And so then you're like, okay, how do I get to 20 units per day? And so then you start scaling. Or if I have doing social media for different old school sort of mom and pop businesses, how many clients do I need to make this work, right? So maybe say, okay, I need to make at least $2,000 or $3,000 per month. So if I'm charging, each client, say $500 per month, and then I need 6 clients. So as long as I have 6 clients per month, and as long as they keep me on board, I can make $3,000, and then I'm good. So really just kind of like that, just really understanding your numbers and your sort of business fundamentals, where if you break it down like that, you're like, okay, that's not so hard. I just need to go get 6 restaurants that I'll do their social media marketing for, or I just need to go find a product that I can sell and start selling 10 units a day. And as long as I can do that, then I can start, then my business can work. So that's that's the way I would sort of approach it. But we kind of like really breaking down from a really simple standpoint and just getting started. Don't, the worst thing that people can do is try to say, okay, how do I build a $10 million company on my first shop? That's just not going to happen, right? And it might happen, but at first you just really need to say, okay, how do I start with just one product or one service, and take it from there.
Okay, great advice from a great man. With that, we've come to an end for our interview. And I must say this Fiesta app is looking pretty good. The interview has gone pretty smoothly, and I am considering using it for our further interviews. Thank you, Mr. Bernardo, for taking your time and joining us today. And I'm pretty sure that everyone who's been watching this interview has learned a lot from it, and to not be discouraged by no matter what other people might say, and just pivot according to different circumstances. So yeah, thank you, sir. And also, I'd like to express my gratitude on behalf of PIE and IEEE Kerala section.
Yes, thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to working with you guys again, certainly.
Sure, sir.
Yep.
Okay, so this is Hannah signing off. Thank you.